Thank you very much. And I realize that we're already 2 minutes over the panel allotted slot, but yeah, if you give me the 5 minutes. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, although I realize I have the wrong haircut for this, for this panel. So I'm going to sort of try and look at the big picture here, because I'm a great fan of the big picture. I think it's important to, not miss the overall perspective of what's happening here. So politics, my favorite definition of politics is Harold Laswell's. Politics is the study of who gets what, when, and how. And what we're seeing right now, I have a few, I'll group the remarks into a few buckets, but the first thing I want to say is that this is not business as usual. We're not living in times where complacency is a good thing to think about. We should absolutely be optimistic, but I think clear-eyed optimism is necessary, which means that we don't delude ourselves into thinking that, yeah, this is just, a disruption and we'll get back to it. Next year everything will be okay, or in 5 years it'll be okay. It won't be okay. The political and planetary challenges are massive and severe. So, we see this at different levels, but at universities, you see this with students, you see this in communities. The appeal of extreme politics, and the extreme politics itself, in its own way, is a kind of hope, right? It's people coming from different perspectives and wanting change and not seeing that. And that is what certain kinds of political actors capitalize on. And so whether it's the students who go for Greens and who are not looking at, well, this is what they're going to do, but how are they going to do it? We don't know. Or whether it's people wanting to, it's not that they're necessarily, bad people, but they're people who want to see things done differently, where they don't feel they're excluded. And I would say that it's part of this is recognizing that that's real. So whether we agree with it or not, it's happening. So that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is to then recognize also that, the experts and the people and the policymakers don't always know, and they can't say they don't know. So there's also that thing of, of just reinforcing and doubling down on the common sense and thinking, yes, this is what it is. So if I think about, the British International Studies Association, which is a professional organization of international relations, the year that Trump came to power in November this year, I've been working on, extreme politics for a while, for a very long time. But there was this panel with these distinguished experts, and all of them just, didn't think anything would change very much if Trump came to power. And I sat there thinking, you have no idea. Things will change, and they'll change significantly, and they did. And so the idea that, that relying upon expert opinion doesn't always give us the best view of what's coming. So I guess my takeaway here is pay attention to the outlier views, because it matters. Because that's part of the picture that can otherwise be missed. Now, in terms of, to answer the specific question we were posed, I think the surprise is the extent to which this cleavage has been widening and the speed at which that's been happening. The move away from a kind of consensus, centrist sort of politics where we can agree on some things to where we can just absolutely not agree on most things. And then that becomes very easy to convert that thing into, well, it's not that I'm disagreeing with you, you're my enemy. And I'm your enemy, and therefore lots of other things get legitimized in that story. So that's one thing. I think one of the things that I do want to emphasize that other speakers and fellow panelists have brought up, I think it's really important to understand that narrative is key. It's not, so winning elections is obviously not the same thing as bringing about change, but also that, an event, I'm quoting someone here, an event is not that which happened, but it's that which can be narrated. It's how do you tell the story of what's going on. And one of my other, you mentioned critical interdisciplinary, absolutely, I did my degree in the 90s as well, my undergrad. So, one of the things that to me is very important, because I've gone from, studied at different times sciences and degrees in economics, philosophy, politics and IR, is the big picture. It's like if you don't do that, and I don't think universities do that very well right now. I don't think there is even actually sciences collaborate a lot more and bring about the innovations than social sciences. Social sciences are not collaborating. So if you want to know how people are making decisions, well, they have preferences. Fine, economists will say they have preferences. Where do the preferences come from? Go to psychology. Psychology will tell you where they come from, but what are the impacts? Go to sociology. And have these people been speaking to each other? No. And on top of that, have these set of people been speaking to the media and to the policymakers and others? there aren't even the right spaces, and there isn't enough of of a drive to making that happen. And in the world that we're going to find ourselves in the next 10, 15 years, that is going to be important. Because just knowing things is not going to be the crucial thing. The LLM will tell you that. The thing that's going to be important is the ability to connect the dots and see that and interpret that and make that into something. So I think there's also something to be said about the way in which universities visualize what they're doing. What are they there for? Not just who they're there for, but what are they doing? What kind of knowledge is being produced? Now, you might then think that I'm going to say, oh, well, AI is going to come and we're doomed. I'm absolutely not an AI doomer. So just stay with me for like 30 seconds, because I want to say that the dominant narrative that AI is destroying the world is actually, I would actually urge you to just stop and think about it for a moment. AI is not destroying the world. What will destroy the world, if it does, is the political capture of AI by bad actors. And that's not the same thing. AI is innovation. It's really important. Okay, also, how is it important? Because Financial Times research, social media polarizes people. LLMs, which is large language models, depolarize. You actually learn more and you get different perspectives. So people as well as policymakers, and this is something I try and engage as much as I can with policymakers and academics too, because this idea that we're all headed for doom is actually not taking into account what good this innovation is capable of, and to be able to recognize that. So from a policy perspective, it should be important to see how can we have technologies that, unlike social media, are not pulling people apart, that are actually getting people to see things they haven't seen before. So that's for me, I think that's a really important thing. And one can't, again, wish away these things, but one can plan for what challenges, how we anticipate and address these challenges. And finally, I think, again, the university. So what is the university? In the 60s in economics, there used to be this thing about what is a firm, and eventually people realized a firm isn't just a building somewhere. So what is a university? It's the idea is the university is a building somewhere where people do these things, or maybe that's a building somewhere else in another country, in an overseas branch where people do these things, or maybe it's like the Open University, so you have people who are doing things online. But could the university in the world of the future also be some other things? Could it be other, more modular things, as in addition to the thing that it is, which is actually able to connect more to communities? And I think so I'm actually sort of pushing us also to think about what is the university capable of being, and how do we eventually, not today or tomorrow, but in the long run, how do we sort of integrate some of this? And these are, because the question of university, the question of elections, the question of politics, these are questions of politics as well as knowledge. As scientists, philosophy of science, people say, well, questions of knowledge are questions of social order. So if universities are certain things and they're not certain things, then that is partly also about certain kinds of social order. And I think the last thing that I would like to say is, so these questions, I'm just trying to sort of see this and see if I'm absolutely dying to say anything.
These are amazing notes, by the way.
They're just completely non-linear, but it's helpful to think like that. And I think the point about philosophy that I think Vivian made, I just want to sort of say that again. So it's not, again, one of the things that I think, at different times, if somebody said, well, I specialize, or somebody who works on, West Asian, Middle Eastern politics, or works on Russian politics, and people would have said, what's the point of that? That's never going to be useful. So this, I think, going forward, these kinds of interpretive disciplines, including philosophy, I think AI in the next 5 years is going to need a lot of philosophers. Trust me, because there are a lot of questions there that will need the kind of inputs that philosophers can bring in. So we should not also, again, keep challenging the common sense assumptions of this is what's useful, this is what's not. So I think that, so this is not to say that any discipline is, as I said, sciences are collaborating, sciences are what we need. And I think actually social sciences should, in the university sector, collaborate more.
I think we may need to wrap up.
I think that's probably it. I don't think I'll be able to read whatever else is here in the space of time that I have. Don't be doomers. Be optimistic, but be cautiously optimistic. And I think really think beyond the boundaries of what we can imagine right now. Because possibly if we think back in time, if we think outside of our present time, most of the things that happened weren't the sorts of things that people were really expecting to have happened. And that's uncomfortable, but I think that's necessary, and that absolutely needs thinking from different perspectives and different knowledge perspectives as well, including how we understand politics.